Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first World Affairs Council of New Hampshire live online event of the fall here in 2021. We really appreciate you all joining us, whether it is live or watching the replay online. We hope that you find tonight's event very interesting, engaging, and helpful to your understanding of the very complex issue of cybersecurity, cyber attacks, and how this all plays into global affairs. We are very excited to have Colin Bastable here tonight as our expert speaker to provide his insights through his many years of work in this field. Just a couple of reminders before we go ahead and get started. Tonight we will be taking questions through our Facebook, Twitter, and email accounts. You can see them here on our screen. So we'll flash this throughout the night. Please do send us your questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can before 7 o'clock. Also, the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization, and therefore does not take any stances on policy issues or candidates or politicians. We are simply here as a platform for discussion and try to provide you with expert insights into top global issues to help you better understand what's going on in the world. We are also a membership organization and therefore are supported and helped through your memberships, your donations, your sponsorships. And so we do ask that if you enjoy our programming, if you value global information and you appreciate having a source of expert information on these issues, that you do consider donating to support the work that we do. We try to keep as many of these programs free and open to the public as possible to make sure that we are meeting our mission of educating people about global issues. So at this point, I'd like to turn things over to one of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire's board members, Davis Farmer, to do a little intro. Hey, Davis, how are you?
Hi, Tim. I'm well, and thank you. As Tim said, I'm Davis Farmer. I'm head of the Program Committee of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. This evening's presentation is one of a series of talks on topical subjects, which we hope are both interesting and entertaining and valuable to our audience. The mission of the World Affairs Council is to provide host presentations on international affairs or on topics of global importance. We hope that these presentations are both entertaining and informative. As Tim said, we're a not-for-profit, nonpartisan organization that is supported by our members and sponsors. And we invite any of you who are not currently involved in the council to join us. You'd be very welcome. For more information, please go to our website, WACNH.org. Our guest speaker this evening is Colin Bastable, CEO of Lucy Securities. Lucy is a global IT company that provides software tools and analytics to help their clients better defend themselves against cyber attacks. Colin is a frequent speaker and a recognized expert on cybersecurity. He joins us tonight from Austin, Texas, where he lives due to a stated aversion to contact with snow. Please join me in welcoming Colin.
Thank you so much, Davis. That's very kind, and thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. And what I thought I'd do is keep this at a layman's level, if we can. So even though we talk about cyber threats and cybersecurity, I think we want to make it in a format that relates to people, but we can also touch on some of the wider issues as well. And I'll be happy to respond to any questions as we go. And I thought it might be useful, and I haven't got 100 slides here, so don't worry about that. I do just have a few background slides, and I thought it would be useful to explain my journey, how I arrived at where I arrived. And so I've got 25 years of IT security experience, and so I've been in quite a few businesses. I mix between startups and established businesses. As you can tell by my speech impediment, I'm not originally from the US. I came over here with a British company and loved it so much I stayed. So I've also built markets, businesses, sold, and lived in different countries. So I do have a flavor of what's what comes from Europe, the USA, the Middle East, Japan, Hong Kong, Australasia, all with similarities and also all the differences. So I do have a perspective on how things are viewed differently and seen differently, which informs some of my experience, and it got me to where I am. I think one of the main pieces for me was the antivirus business. Now, there was a time when antivirus was the solution to any IT threat. That was it. And I ended up working in the antivirus business. And I find it interesting, actually, that the three formational businesses in this industry were each founded by individuals. So actually, the British Dr. Alan Solomon, he was the first guy that conceived of and developed the antivirus toolkit. Peter Norton, that company was bought by Symantec, again, a very well-known American brand. And we all know John McAfee, he just had a very sad end. So I worked at Solomon's and then at McAfee, who later on eventually managed to buy Solomon's. So I spent a lot of time in that market, and here's the thing, and it's maybe it's a little bit sort of skeptical, but it's a quarterly business, and 4 weeks before every quarter, news would hit about more virus variants in the wild. Actually, there were only ever like 6 viruses in the wild, and then there were just millions that were theoretically created, or they were very, and that's a rather contemporary tale, isn't it, with all the different virus variations we hear about now. But we assumed in sales that it was McAfee and Symantec's PR at work, because they wanted to drive people to close the quarter, because everyone says, oh, I don't need that technology, until they get hit, and then suddenly they do. But I moved on, and I went to work for the crypto company that brought me here, and then I was with another startup. And the thing is, the media experts were still saying keep your virus signatures up to date, but by now we were into a multi-billion-dollar theft market, and it seemed strange to me that the attacks and the losses kept on escalating, and all they were saying was, well, keep your signatures up to date. So there was something wrong. Sorry about that. And actually, I think my my big bing moment was there was a 60 Minutes program. And again, it was the Symantec guy on TV telling everybody the only way to protect yourself, or the best way to protect yourself, is keep your signatures up to date. I think you've gathered by now that I sort of thought that doesn't quite work. So that was my magic moment when I kind of realized it's actually about the people. And so we have to learn how to be protected. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our colleagues. So we need a holistic approach. You can't really teach this in the classroom per se. So it has to be continuous lifetime training, but it treats people as part of the solution, not the problem. And I can tell you, I've worked in IT companies. The network guys, the security guys think everyone else is a problem. If there were no end users, they think that the company would be perfectly safe. And yet I can tell you, I was with Dr. Solomon's antivirus company, and it was the sales engineers who brought a virus into the company. So that's the way it can work. But we have to teach people. And for me, the best place to teach people, you can teach them in school and college, is at work, because we don't live the same way as we used to. So we need to be taught how to protect ourselves in the real world, and that's just a continual thing. Now, I just want to slightly change the tempo a bit. So this is 3% of the time. This sort of thing happens 3% of the time. Open the door! I tell you! Open the door! Open the door! Open the door! Let's not the door! Open the door! The other door! And that's what we know. Tom Cruise goes whizzing through the door. But in reality, 97% of the time, it is the other door. It's the open door, the door that's opened by people. So, the fact is 97% of all attacks target the human. All right. And over 90%, 91% are phishing attacks. So that pipeline ransomware attack started when somebody managed to socially engineer their way in, and they got at an unprotected server, and they were in. All of these attacks are usually about human error, somebody setting something up. It's not about somebody magically hacking in and finding the secret technology. So, the major door opener, and this is pertinent to everybody, is human behavior. And the other thing to remember is that the bad guys, they're not really employing technology. We're employing technology to defend ourselves, but they're using confidence tricksters, that they're using marketing techniques to exploit human behavior. And it's the knockout. Basically, all of the technology in the world, whether it's a virus update or anything else, is never going to overcome human error or carelessness. And particularly in a high-stress, high-pressure world, that's what we face. So I just thought it might be interesting to take a look at the dark web. And we read about the dark web, but not a lot of people really get a chance to have a glimpse into the dark web. So this is a tool that my company sells, and there are other solutions out there. This is actually rather advanced. And it's not so much the front end, it's the back end, the research. But I was looking for an interesting sort of attack. So this bonobos, and it was earlier this year, okay? So I was thinking, well, so what do we know about that? So I just plugged in bonobos, and we found that we got 2,300 different leaks. So we got a bunch of accounts. So this is all on the web. So we got some employee emails, and these are obfuscated, but we're also able to get the full email. And you can see there's a whole load of people that have different emails, but there are thousands of compromised accounts. We can see the social network posts, we can see different leaks and so on, mails, and then we can start to look into external sources and so on. So we can see all sorts of interesting things. And obviously it's using a name that's related to animals as well. But you can use this, you can imagine, to protect yourself, and that's what we sell it for. But obviously the bad guys have got access to this and a whole load more, and it's a very, very well rewarded business. So basically, if I was, for instance, a bank, another piece of this. So here's Bank of America. And this is quite important for us as individuals to understand how things work. Just want to point out HTTPS. HTTPS was always the padlock, and hey, you're safe with that. Safe site with HTTPS. Well, that's not true. All it means is you can be robbed safely. Okay. Over 80% of all hacking sites have a certificate. But you can see there are nearly 1,200 Bank of America fake sites. And I don't know if you can read this, it might be a bit too small for you, but there are all sorts of little versions, and some just have little umlauts and numbers. And most of them have been parked. They've been parked because if it was just bought yesterday and then used, it wouldn't get through any defenses, because firewalls look for recent firewalls. But you can see there are some high-risk sites here, and they basically they're ready to be used. So that's another sort of thing you have to look out for. And just a couple of things I was just thinking here. So I just saw this hack alert: Google issues warning to Chrome users. Just a note here, and yeah, I think people have to be aware that if you're using Google Chrome, you don't have privacy, even if you say you do. So these are some things that you should probably be thinking about. Okay, so let me go back to the deck here, and we'll just round this out. Okay, so with those things in mind, I thought that the question is, so what can you do? How can you protect yourself? And so there are some basic things that actually people forget. So hover over a link hover over a link before you click on it. It's amazing that it's very easy to click on a link and you think it's real. I showed you that email earlier. Even worse, a mobile phone. A mobile phone has less defense. You often can't see what you're clicking on, and you get an email from your bank telling you about your account. And I've had these and almost clicked on them. So be ultra careful and think about it. Smishing is on the rise. There's such a lot of it, and there's also vishing, voicemail. So we just have to be incredibly careful. But we also have to remember that between 20 and 30% of people in any cohort who are untrained will fall for a phishing attack. That's people it could be you. It's human nature because these people are they're exploiting human behavior. So spoofing does happen. Spoofing sites, you think it's one company, but it's not. So so this is the email I was talking about. I received this email yesterday or the day before. So it's for a real application. We use this application. I fortunately don't, but this came to my company, and you can see it says it came from lucysecurity.com. So they've spoofed through our email address, and I've done this when I demonstrate my products to people. The only difference is that the message says this very, very long site here. So I hovered over it and I saw it, and some of my people fell for this, and we're a security company. Now, it didn't cause any damage. There were no malicious issues there, and it came from Russia, so we can find out where it came from. But and I've had several more of these since. So this happens all the time. It's very, very real, incredibly believable stuff. Like with my product, I could do a spoof of a website. It looks perfect. I can drop a login form, and if I can do it, then so can the bad guys. So a couple more things here. So social media is, it's addictive. Everybody is posting, but that is an amazing way to give away your information. And one-on-one, we're probably not at such risk, although we work for companies, so people are looking to find out what we're doing, where we are, and then they're pretending to be friends. I receive all sorts of invitations from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a commercial risk. So I used to have 2,000 connections, and I cut it down to 20 because I've had so many people trying to use me to get at other people. So people should seriously think about that. Generally, big data is everywhere, so reduce your footprint where you can. And it's not so much you shouldn't trust the big companies. You shouldn't necessarily trust them, but it's the third parties that they work with that are the threat. Turn off your mobile devices sometimes. I think more importantly, when you update, every time you update your software, phone or something, the permissions are changed. And these permissions reveal a lot about you. I mentioned Chrome, the browser, earlier. So I do recommend that you either have Brave or Dissenter if you can as a browser, because it's not sharing information. We see all these things that are happening all the time. Big companies are not secure, okay? And everything you do in a digital world is trackable. Now there is a very important difference. So this is a world affairs piece, and if your government or another government wants to spy on you, you can't do a thing about it. Because they have all the resources, and it happens. We know this. There's a technology called Pegasus, which came out of Israel. It's used by governments. They use it to spy on journalists. It's used in every country in the world, and it's dropped onto your supposedly unhackable iPhone and so on. So all of these things you really can't defend too much against. Everybody's hacking. We know the Russians do it, and these are smart people. The Chinese do it immensely. They do it to steal information. It's a continual war. The Americans do it. The British do it. The Israelis do it. The French do it. Everybody is hacking and spying. Okay. And just remember that most people end up hacking themselves. So if you can have a policy of thinking about what you're doing, then you can reduce your risk profile. And it's a bit of a sprint, but that's my my little piece. So I can kind of stop sharing here. And so thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Colin. That was really interesting. We've got a number of questions that have already come in, and please, as we continue this conversation, we'd love to hear from you and get your insights into what questions you may have. So one thing that I think I'm particularly interested in, you mentioned China in particular, obviously big issue in the U.S. These days with U.S.-China relations seemingly growing more and more tense every year. Can you talk a little bit about the concerns that countries have, mostly Western countries, about Chinese companies getting into 5G networks and what sort of activity, what sort of risks we're seeing around that, and whether or not it's something that we do need to be concerned about, or is this something that's just caught up in this competition between the U.S. and China?
Absolutely, people should be concerned about it, and the governments have been so complacent. There was a big mistake made, I think, in assuming that by bringing China into the World Trade Council and so on, we were going to open the door. It reminds me of what people said about Japan at the turn of the 19th, 20th century. They said we opened the door to go in, and they all came out. And so, but the problem with the Chinese is that all of their technology is based on acquired and stolen technology and technology transfer. I think we all know that, but they do have a very, very centralized system. Everything is for the benefit of the state. All businesses and citizens are expected to support the security issues of the state. So technologies like Huawei, we can call it a private company, but really it is, it's founded by a senior PLA guy, and there is just a tremendous risk. You do not know what is going on, or the governments are kind of trapped because all of the technology was shipped over to China or under Chinese control, and there is a dearth of secure domestic technology. So big issue. I think 5G. Actually, I think they've moved on now. They're talking 6G. And if they have this technology lead, then it's going to be a major impact on our security. Look at all the drones. I bought a drone. It was a US drone, and then the Chinese literally own the market for drones. Everything, all of this technology. You have to remember that people are tracking locations, information. They're able to suck up lots of data and build a map of where you're going. So it's not an overstated fear here. Very, very serious issue that we have of making ourselves vulnerable to a sole supplier.
Great. We have another question in here about China and bringing it a little bit more defined. Should we be concerned about China collecting personally identifying information and using it in their artificial intelligence programs?
We should be very concerned about everyone using AI to collect PII. However they're collecting it. So, and the problem is that, I have this little saying that data yearns to be free. It will break free. Anybody who is using AI, though, is basically setting off on an auto program that's going to self-learn. The Chinese in particular, it must have been 10 or 15 years ago that I think it was the foreign Department of State or the DOD or somebody had one of their personnel databases hosted in China. But definitely the Chinese government has probably got mapped most important citizens in the USA. They understand everything they're doing, and that data can be immensely valuable. We don't have the same set of information on the Chinese. So absolutely. It's all usable, and they can target you. It could be phishing, it could be anything, it could be blackmail, it could be all sorts of things that they're going to know all of your habits. They're going to know what you want to do. They're going to be able to target you with the selling technology, advertising, whatever it is. You can't trust them with your data. The Chinese people can't trust their own government because they have this social credit system, which is a tremendous threat to the foundation of this country, which is liberty and independence. So yeah, big deal.
Yeah, certainly not anything I want to see happen with my data would be it going to China. I was going to go to a different question, but this one just came in, and I think really fits with sort of what you were talking about. Someone writes in, I don't see myself as a target, as I don't have anything to hide. Am I wrong?
So there are two levels of it. Everybody thinks I'm too small, they can't see me, but if you've got something, then you've got something to lose. So nobody is too small. And was it Stalin said you may not be interested in the war, but the war is interested in you? So the fact is that most phishing attacks, and that's 90% start that way. Most phishing attacks, they don't know who you are; they're just firing them out, and you'll you like I say, 20-30% will fall for these people. It could be anything. If it's your interest, you'll fall for it. They start to get information on you. They can build a database. They don't have to attack you then. They'll build a whole profile of you, and then they might find out, hey, you've just joined this company, or you've got a small business. So I'll give you a real example. So somebody I know received an email from me, and it said, hey, text me, here's my number. It was from me, this was apparently. Said, hey, listen, I need you to do me a favor. So text me. So they texted this number. It wasn't my phone number. And said, how can I help you? Look, I'm busy. Do me a favor. Send me, go buy a couple of $1,000 worth of gift cards. I want to reward everybody. This is the gift card scam, which is a version of a CEO scam. Scratch off the numbers, send photos to me. Okay. And $2,000 down the drain. That can happen to anybody. At the other end of the scale, CEO fraud is such a common thing. It costs billions of dollars. It can wreck lives, close down businesses, multi-million-dollar thefts. And it all starts with people who didn't think they were visible.
Yeah, and another great example, or I guess great is not the right word there, but another example is recently Portsmouth, New Hampshire was hit with one of these phishing attacks and has lost over $2 million to hackers who just happen to know that the payment should be going out. So I know you and I talked a little bit about that, but can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so I mean, God bless America. One of the things is that all government spending is public. So yeah, I have a database because I sell to government, so I can find out every single deal, whether it's buying pens, paper, pencils. So the other piece is you've got an open tendering piece. We had a Maine school district down here had the same thing, where say you're building a school and it's maybe $20 million. So the contract is public, so you know that it's XYZ Construction Co. And you know that they've got $2 million worth of the bids. So you just send in your email saying, hey, I've just had to change my bank account. Can you wire me the money when it's through? Bang, done. 2 million gone. It's that simple. It's happening everywhere. And these hackers, it's not even hacking then. Really, they were, like I say, the door's open for them. But yeah, it's happening everywhere, and it's not going away.
Certainly. So we hear a lot about Russia, China, and we have a question here of just wondering who the other major players are in the international space.
Yeah. So obviously the Israelis, they're a bit of an island economy, if you like. They're kind of surrounded, aren't they? So the Russians are also surrounded. We don't see that, which is why they have their view. The Chinese think they're surrounded. So everybody who starts off with a defensive posture can use this for attack. So the major players, obviously there is Five Eyes, and Five Eyes, where America, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, the Anglosphere. So we saw with the submarine deal, and I know this isn't cybertech, but it's the same thing. We saw with the submarine deal how the plates are shifting, the tectonic plates are shifting. So the other players, the French, the French and the British and the Americans used to use their petrochem companies as basically as bases, and also the media, the news media. The French have a very established global espionage network and hacking network. So do the British, obviously. They got GCHQ. Between GCHQ and the NSA and the Australian listening posts, every single digital transmission is captured and is stored for later analysis. So there are those breakaway, Russian technology. I mean, the North Koreans, this is a survival economy, but they make a tremendous amount of money. Mainly, they're just after the money, though. Yeah, they're after money laundering. They are very, very smart people. We have to remember that it's easier to attack than it is to defend. And if you are very well motivated and smart, you're going to do it. But if you're a government, we know the Iranians are very reliant on espionage to obtain information, and the Saudis, obviously. So it's kind of this check and balance piece. There's a lot of smart hackers. You wouldn't maybe think of this on a government level. A lot of smart hackers in Latin America and Brazil and so on. So we don't necessarily hear too much about those as government entities. But obviously, in my opinion, a lot of their effort is directed inwards on their own people. It's actually, I think probably the only people that don't do this are the Icelanders. So I think Iceland probably doesn't bother with it. But you read about everybody has an intelligence service, and they all have a department that's based on cyber defense. And if you've got a cyber defense, you've got a cyber attack, because the best form of defense is attack. Okay,
that is one that I think is a really important question to dive a little deeper on. I was watching before our program here tonight. Recently, a food stuff organization in Iowa was hit that is going to potentially bring down 40% of grain supplies here in the U.S. They supply over 11 million cattle with feedstock every year. What are we looking at in terms of becoming more active to discourage these international criminal organizations and governments? Do we see a blowback? Do we see them becoming more active against us? You saw with the 2020 elections, the NSA was planning to do denial of service on many of the Russian groups that had tried to disrupt the 2016 elections. So do we see more blowback as we become more active in this space?
I think it's impossible to defend the castle, to defend the fort. So we can get, what are we going to do? We're going to declare war on everybody. So at least nobody's being shot, I suppose. So for every defense that you build, there is a better attack. And it's always the way. So we're not going to be able to defend ourselves per se with technology. Okay. I mean, if you look at American infrastructure and so on, a lot of it is quite old. That moving curtain is my dog getting bored and wanting to go and have dinner. So I think the challenge is, if you're going to go and attack everybody, what are you going to do? Shut down the internet in America? You're going to isolate everybody? I don't see a solution. I really don't. What I see is a continuing game where we'll come up with another technology fence, and then people will use socially engineered defenses to get around it. And then eventually we'll work out that we should actually teach people a lot more how to be safe. But the attack on the food chain, the attack on the pipelines, all of these, at the heart of it, the big motivator, the big driver is money. So ransomware attacks, the thing about ransomware attacks is they changed in the last 2 or 3 years. It used to be you come in, you encrypt everything, and then you get your money on the ransom. But everyone thinks that cryptocurrencies are untraceable. Actually, they're very traceable. That's the whole idea. So then they discovered that probably the next best thing was to once you've stolen the data and maybe got a ransom out of the company, is to go and sell it on the open market. So it's just easier to attack, particularly national infrastructure, where people think, hey, it's food distribution, who cares? But if you can freeze something and you can put pressure on people, then you've got a pressure point. I can't think of, I just don't have something positive except that, we're not going to go to war over that, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, you did see Israel in, I think, 2018 do an airstrike on a Palestinian building that they believed was housing Hamas's cyber attacks capabilities. And so I think that was the first and possibly the only physical attack to take down a cyber attack like that. But from what we heard when we hosted David Sanger in 2018 was he believed that these attacks will remain at a point that stays below something that will cause a physical attack. Do you agree with that assessment? Is that still valid?
Well, and I don't know if this is getting onto political or something, but I think the problem is the Chinese are they're so driven by 500 years of humiliation, and they have a 500-year vision. They're the only country in the world that has a 500-year vision. So they have a belief in their destiny, and unfortunately, we can see that they will probably judge the West to be too weak militarily in some points, particularly in the Pacific. And this is purely my view. Who knows? So, but I think for most people, they are better off attacking with the same sort of threat. So if you hack me, I'll hack you, which is why we see such a lot of technology attacks on the Iranian nuclear development program, because everyone would rather that they didn't level the place. So I think it's the version of mutually assured destruction, that probably keeps people in the cyber game. But eventually, politics has to get real, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is very interesting how this all plays into politics and geopolitical realities. So I think this next question fits nicely into that. With Russian criminal organizations playing such a role in these attacks, why can't Putin shut this down? Is he benefiting from this? And I think the question is, we see him as a strong man, as a very strong leader of Russia. Shouldn't he be able to just say, hey, guys, knock it off?
What's in it for him? The Russians, my dog came back, excuse me. The Russians are not programmed the same way that Americans are. Americans believe in win-win. Russians believe in lose-lose. And if any, you like Napoleon and Hitler marching into Russia, it's a hard game. So they what's in it for Putin? They're not attacking him, because he deals with anybody that attacks his power base. If he's got anybody who gets off the leash, he can sort them out, can't he? Anywhere in the world, his tame oligarchs. So we feel the pain. We're not going to retaliate against him because he's they may be poorer than they were, but they're a big boy. So the question is, he doesn't win for that, and a bit close to my own homeland. In Ireland, it wasn't really in the interests of the Southern Irish to worry too much about the IRA, as long as they were doing all the attacking in the north. But when it spills down, then they would retaliate. So if these hackers were stealing his stuff, if they were attacking Russia, then I think he would squash that in a second. I think he probably quite enjoys the fact that we're vulnerable, and that he's got a bunch of people who are motivated to do this.
All right. Let me see here. Also, one of the questions, and I'm trying to find it in our chat here, is about attribution. Oh, here we go. So we hear that we know where these attacks come from, but attribution, of course, is pretty difficult. How certain are we that we know where these attacks are coming from, or are people able to hide their locations effectively?
Super question. And so whenever you read immediately experts say it was Russia, then it's basically most people don't know. I told you about that little attack on me, and we traced that to the IP address. So we could see that came from Russia, but often you can spoof IP addresses or you can relay. But this would have just been a freelance operation. So government level attacks and a lot of private ones, you don't know where they came from. So therefore, there is very little proof. And anybody who says, oh, this definitely came from there, it's usually we believe it came from there. And that really isn't good enough. It certainly isn't good enough to do an overt retaliation. So that is the biggest thing. It's great for headlines, and it can make people sound, that they know what's going on. But the truth is, most people don't know where it came from, and most of the attacks wouldn't succeed if people had changed passwords. They'd use proper procedure to set something up, and if somebody wasn't clicking on links and so on. But yeah, it's if there's pain and a big crisis, then everyone now wants to know who's to blame, and so they'll just pick a country. But no, nobody knows. Very, very rare that people know.
Okay, yeah. Continuing down our super uplifting talk about what's going on in this space. We have a question here. The U.S. seems to get hit more often than others. Is that just what we hear about, or are these same attacks happening elsewhere?
So my first thought was, for everybody else, it's a bit like, why do banks get robbed? Because that's where the money is. Sorry about that, but this is still a wealthy economy. It's an open economy. We've got a large population. We there is so much here. But we hear because we have our own media. So like the British get hit. I mean, their national health service gets closed down regularly because they don't spend money on updating their software and so on. So everybody is getting hacked. There was a French hit the other day. It was a French research establishment of medical records. So everybody's getting hit. I don't think the Chinese are, and I expect we wouldn't hear about the Russian stuff. So now everybody's getting hit. We just hear about our own pain. But this is a honeypot, isn't it? I mean, there's so much cash here, so much money. The banking system is quite vulnerable. People are very vulnerable here. So if you've got that money, you're probably going to so one example, the housing market, where you have the intermediary, and where you're going to sign off and you send your check out. So that is one of the biggest fraud pieces in the world. Yeah, so basically, so many people just wiring money, and they think it's going to buy their house or put the money down, and it gets intercepted. It's an unseen but very, very big. That's a domestic thing. So I guess we've got our own people as well. But yeah, I think it's the news, and you probably make more money cyber robbing America than you do any other country.
Yeah, we just purchased a house ourselves, and the number of times we had to sign off saying, yes, we understand, don't send via wire. And if you're going to wire something, call, confirm, make sure that you're sending it to the right place, is certainly a a big issue in the housing market these days.
Yeah, if I could just say, I know somebody, I know a company in that business that was hit by a ransomware attack, and literally they've got a network of thousands of lawyers who were, the last thing you want is a bunch of angry lawyers after you. Basically that closed that business down, and it was all in that same business. So it's a fraught business to be in.
Yeah, but here's an interesting question that just sort of popped into my mind. So we hear about white hat hackers, but I'd be interested to know, are hackers hacking each other, or is there sort of a hacker code that says we leave each other alone and only go after legitimate targets in their mind?
I don't think so. No, I don't think there's a sort of an ethical code amongst crooks. I think I think it comes down to that point that most hacking starts with social engineering, and they're not doing that 3% thing. Of course, when they're in, they are very smart, so they know how to exploit technology when they're in there. So do they? No, they don't have that. So the white hat hackers, their job is okay. I'm playing defense. You have this thing, red team, blue team. So the good guys are hacking to find weaknesses, and as I say, 97% of those weaknesses are walking around and have a pulse and eat. So now, but we know that governments hack each other. So they're going back and forth doing these things. So conceivably, if somebody's got away with the goods, then and if anybody else knows about it, then presumably there is a chance to get that. But I think most of the guys, like if you do a major CEO fraud, you're going to run the money through half a dozen banks. It'll go through the Middle East out to the Far East, and then you'll turn it into cash and be gone. So no, I don't think there is was it honor amongst thieves.
Sorry, just adding one more question that came in through our email, and please do keep the questions coming. We really appreciate hearing from you. So Steve mentions or asks, you mentioned governments hacking each other. Are we hacking our allies, or do we leave them alone?
Well, I know, ask Angela Merkel, because so she was being hacked. That Pegasus case, was it Macron's phone was infected with it or something? So no. In theory, I know the British and the Americans have this, hey, we won't if you won't. So I think there's a mutual interest in being careful. But obviously, you can define an ally varied. What's the thing? You don't really have friends, you just have interests. So I think the British, Americans and French and the Canadians, New Zealanders tend not to operate in each other's own backyards unless they're going for another third party. So that's probably a pretty good alliance. I would say the French, will, and I'm not saying this because I'm English, okay, but they have a broad spread apparatus, and certainly the Israelis, there are allies, aren't they? But I think they have some history as well, because, as I say, you have interests before you have friends. So, and everyone knows it goes on, but people probably like to sweep it under the carpet, and then they'll just throw out some diplomats every now and again. So no, I think it's so tempting, and people want to test their skills, don't they? So it's a governmental level version of the red team blue team piece. So I guess we don't hear too much about the close ally spying, but it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, certainly. I would not be surprised to hear that it is happening out there. So speaking of government relations, do you see it possible that countries will come together to outline rules of what is acceptable to try and steal from each other, or are there just too many people playing in the space to have any sort of control over it?
I know there's talks of having a UN convention to set the rules. As soon as the Chinese get involved with that, then their basic it's in their interest and the Russians' interest and totalitarian government's interest to try and control the internet. If you control the internet, then you can control what's being stolen to some extent, but it still leaves the governments with a free hand, doesn't it? So I think that's a utopian piece. I think you'll never regulate the desire for, at least for crime, and because there's money involved, and there's also geopolitical winds involved. So and maybe this sounds a bit sort of skeptical. I don't say cynical, but maybe I'm skeptical on this because governments always have an ulterior motive, and so do anybody saying, "Hey, we should level the playing field," and not agree not to do this. I mean, that's kind of opening the door for somebody else who hasn't signed up to come in and do it. So the best defense is to teach people to be aware, show them what can go wrong. And make it a lifelong learning thing, so that we as individuals, make each individual I feel like a human firewall. So if you protect yourself, then naturally the attacks will diminish because you're not opening the door, as I say. So that the best defense is actually not governmental. It is right down at the individual, and then in your workplace and your colleagues and family and so on.
Okay, we have another question here from Tom. He'd like to know, his bank account was hacked and he was fully reimbursed. Nobody seemed to want to report it to the police. Are there no consequences here? I mean, if nobody is following up on this and nobody really knows exactly who did it, how are we to find these people and put an end to it?
Yeah, good point. So I was just paying two bank accounts. It wasn't a big hack, okay, but every now and again I get these fraudulent transactions that go through. $20 at Amazon, like $3 here, and basically someone's just running trial transactions, and they'll just keep going. For the banks, it's really not worth the effort. Because particularly they're going to tell the police. What are the police going to do? I think is the problem. Now, if it's a few $million, then there's an audit trail. And you can probably find out where the money went. And if you lost $1 million, then you have my deepest sympathies. But they reimbursed you. So the banks make a lot of money. When I used to work for this cybersecurity company in the hardware business, it was selling these boxes that contain the secret keys, and we sell them to the NSA and the banks and so on. And I met with one of the credit card guys, and I thought, I was trying to sell him, and he said, hey, listen, it's a 6% risk. And we charge 6% fees. And when we bring in chip and pin, it'll be a 3% risk. So we don't care, is basically what he said. I think for the banks, it's just a percentage. So it's a shame, but unless it's multi-millions, I don't think it's economically viable to worry about. And besides, most people, they have something stolen these days. What do? You get an insurance number, go report it. Nothing's going to be done about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you actually now see insurance companies offering products to insure against this kind of mistake, we'll call it, from an employee. Obviously, you probably won't be getting that for your own bank account, but
yeah. Yeah, if I could, I'm sorry, but I just thought a very important piece here that's happening right now is, and if you read all these ransomware attacks that were happening, it really kicked off, say, 2 or 3 years ago. Everyone's saying, oh, they get their money on the cybercrime insurance or the cyber theft or the cyber loss insurance. That used to be one of the most profitable markets for the insurance companies, but they are really racking up the premiums because people didn't have a policy in place. They didn't have a security policy in place. They didn't train people and test and have systems. So that the whole loss insurance piece for losing money to cybercrime is suddenly becoming an unaffordable proposition for a lot of businesses. And I think that is an interesting thing where if the insurance companies, and you're right on this, so if the insurance companies can offer training and if they can offer solutions. Like actually, my company sells to insurance companies that trains employees how to avoid phishing attacks. These are very big deals, particularly in Europe. But it's in the insurance company's interest to mitigate the losses before they happen. Sorry to interrupt you. I just thought that was an interesting follow-up.
No, I think that's great and really helps to dive a little deeper into that topic. So we have a comment here from Richard Maloon, a World Affairs Council member. He'd like to comment a little bit more on individuals who hack into scammers, delete their files, and sort of that idea of payback time. So I think, kind of those white hat hackers and red blue teams, that kind of.
Yeah. So you would never know it happened if it did, really, perhaps. So although there are some, so like when they find the money trail, like the Bitcoins, and then they can go and attack. That tends to be a law enforcement level thing. I'm not so sure. I may be wrong, but I'm not so sure that many white hat hackers and ethical hackers are in the business of hacking the bad guys in that way. I don't think they're paid to do that, and I think it kind of gets into the border. So it would be great, wouldn't it? If we could do that back. But I think that's I'm not convinced that that's a real piece. It would be beautiful to happen, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting question, I think, and will help clarify some things. Will technology ever catch up to the hackers and make hacking obsolete? And I would add on to that, will people eventually stop sending money to Nigerian princes who are willing to give them, $500,000 for their trouble?
That's right, and that's at the heart of it, isn't it? That's the answer, because you remember that cartoon I put up of Dave in the corner, and that's not a technology issue. So the problem is actually that technology is the 3% of the risk, and all of these CISOs and security people. It's much more fun to spend millions of dollars on firewalls and advanced analysis tools. But 97% of the threat is social engineering, and it's those guys sending out the emails pretending to be from Nigeria, and then it's the cleverer ones, the ones who say like vendor email compromise. All of these really don't rely on technology, so the technology will always be behind the defense because it's a people defense, unless of course you fire all the people. I guess if we only had AI running everything and people had no jobs, then it would be a technology story, except for all the people outside the country who would be then hacking in to get the money. So I'm being flippant there. So I can't see that ever happening. I think the bad guys are far more motivated, and they are in a much better position. You can't defend the castle. They're in a far better position. So if I come up with a technology, there will always be a way around it because the technology was invented by somebody. You can see the whole process, and therefore you'll find the weaknesses. And otherwise we wouldn't be getting all these updates, like the Google update, the Chrome update. Microsoft is forever giving it was a patch Tuesday. So people are motivated, and even ethical hackers are rewarded for finding flaws because there are always flaws. So sadly, it's never going to be addressed. And I suppose for the IT security industry, that's a positive because it means the IT security industry isn't going to go out of business any day soon. But there are a lot of people, a lot of professionals and security, CISOs and so on, who are investing in technology that works on its own, but you combine a bunch of them and they don't quite work, or each join is a whole to let people in. And actually, my company, we started as pen testers, penetration testers, and we did work for banks, and we would test individual apps and then test them all together as solutions. And we could just show that actually it looks great on PowerPoint. Everything works on PowerPoint, but no, there you go. Technology is never going to defend against a determined hacker.
Okay, we are coming to time here, but I have one final question, and I hope there is an answer. Is there any bright spot in all of this? Is there anything to give us hope, or are we just eternally doomed to having our information stolen from us and used in horrible, terrible ways?
And I've probably sounded ever so miserable, haven't I? I think the great thing is most of us don't get hacked. So we're all teachable, we're all learnable. We're a lot smarter in many ways. I think that there will be just shifts in technology. So I think most people will learn. But yeah, the beautiful thing is most of us aren't going to lose, and if we lose, we get the money. Like the person whose bank account was robbed. You get your money back because it's somebody else. It's all shared. It's a shared insurance cost by everybody else. So. And life is actually a lot better than it used to be when we were being mugged and robbed for money. So no, I think the positive is that at least we're aware of this. It's people are smart now, and they tend to understand a lot of this, but we can still be caught unawares. So if we just keep on teaching people. And keep on thinking, should I click on that? It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to be hacked. Nobody has to be hacked. Nobody has to fall for a scam. Nobody has to be defrauded. So it's all defendable. And I think the most important thing is don't be that person, and teach other people not to be. And so generally, I think that looks good for most of us. And we just have to do our best to make sure that we don't fall for it. I do think there is a risk in the future, really, with everything becoming digital, with all of the money and the whole idea that you don't actually have cash money, and then you have to have your digital identity. I think that is a bigger threat to us going forwards, centralized control and a digital footprint, because digital can be erased. So in some ways, analog is a good thing.
Yeah, certainly with the idea of digital can be erased is the thing that personally makes me worried about the cryptocurrencies. And, you lose your password and supposedly nobody else can get to that money again. But thank you so much, Colin, for the wonderful discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us here tonight. Obviously, a great number of really insightful questions and some great answers from you. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Tim, and thank you everybody for the questions. That was terrific and very good. So I'm so pleased that you invited me along. So it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I just want to quickly make an announcement for our next program. We're going to be partnering with the World Affairs Council of Connecticut to have an off-the-record conversation with the Saudi ambassador to the U.S., Her Royal Highness Princess Rima. You can join us on Zoom to attend this amazing conversation, and we've been told that no questions off limits. So come with your questions. Come with all you want to know about what is going on in Saudi Arabia these days, at this U.S.-Saudi relationship, etc. You do need to sign up for that event. It is on Zoom, so you will get the private link just to make sure that conversation does remain off the record. We do hope that you can join us for that and many more programs. Check out our website, WACNH.org. For upcoming events on various international topics. Thank you again for joining us live or watching the replay of this. We'd love to continue these conversations down the road, and we hope that you have a wonderful evening. Have a good night.